Wasted money on cures. Forgot how to fix myself. They say that time is free. Then why is it so precious? Oh, I'll say memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. Time is running out. Time is running out. Lately I've lost my track. I've sailed the deeper seas, hoping to find something to bring back better times. Oh, I'll say memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. But time is running out. 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 Time is running. Time is running out. But time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over. They can't be over now. Time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over now. Time is running out. Time is running out. Time is running out.
Oh, hang on. There we go. Okay, everybody, welcome. So a little technical gremlin at the start. Welcome to our latest live macroeconomics revision session. My head looks quite big on the screen, doesn't it? But it's beautiful nonetheless. Today we're going to be focusing on macroeconomics. We're going to take a look at the determinants of short and long run aggregate supply and linking to the importance of that in the spec. Let's crack on straight away as those of you joining us. So welcome everybody, welcome one and all. We always start with a big reveal. Now yesterday we managed to get to option 5 before somebody got the right answer. So here we go. Oh, by the way, Jim says I love Hartlepool. Well, most people do. Here we go. So the first clue has one of the highest current account surpluses in the world. Last year they ran a current account surplus of 11% of GDP. So as you're joining us, welcome everybody. Post the answer into the chat if you're subscribed. So yesterday we got to clue 5 before we got the right answer. So what do we think? George says Angola. It might be, George, except Angola doesn't have a current account surplus of 11% of GDP. That's the only reason it can't be. Fowler says China. Now, interestingly, Fowler, China's current account surplus has diminished over the years. It's huge in dollar terms, but not as a share of GDP. Jim says Germany, and the shrimp says Sweden. None of which are correct. Well, let's move on to the next clue. They've very successfully transitioned to a high-income country over the last, let's say, 50 or 60 years. So Lara thinks Bangladesh, not yet a high-income country. They have aspirations. And Amelia says Qatar, well, one of the highest income countries in the world. It could well be Qatar. Let's see if let's find out. Third clue. They have an export-driven growth model, including a huge, globally scaled semiconductor industry. In fact, one of their businesses, I think one of their industries, has over half the world's production of a key semiconductor. We do have the right answer. We'll just leave it off the screen for a second, but we do have the right answer, and we'll showcase the winner in a second. Fourth clue coming up. Geopolitical risks dominate their economic prospects. What do we think? This is a country at the intersection of economics and geopolitics. It really is. Lara thinks South Korea. George, welcome back to George, thinks Singapore. We do have some correct answers. It's not Japan. The fifth clue, it's the most mountainous island in the world. So it's clearly Wales. Congratulations to those. Goat says it's Japan, Uncle Geoff. Well, Goat, I don't think we're related, but it's not. And Noah and George got the right answer, is Taiwan. But I think the right answer, if we were, do we showcase the first person who got the right answer? I think it was Toby WB who said Taiwan. Congratulations, Toby. You are the winner of today's big reveal. And your prize, if you choose to accept it, is a free entry to tomorrow's big reveal. Here we go. Let's crack on. We're going to look at aggregate supply. So it's macroeconomics, but of course, as I always say, Jim's saying Taiwan's not a real country. Give it up, Jim. Aggregate supply is the macroeconomic equivalent of supply of different industries. Okay, so it's the total output of goods and services that firms in an economy are willing and able to supply at a given price level. Macroeconomics has micro foundations. I always say that. It's true. So a country's aggregate supply is the result of what happens at a micro level. Long-run supply represents essentially the productive potential of a country of maximum output, where all factors of production are fully and efficiently employed. Here we go. Let's do some multiple choice together. I think I've got 3 questions for you, all of which are past exam questions. The diagram shows a shift in the country's short run aggregate supply from SRS1 to SRS2. The country imports oil. So why might an increase in the world's price of oil have caused this shift? What do we think? So there's an inward shift of aggregate supply. What might have caused, why might an increase in the price of oil have caused the shift? Thanks to Sport Motive for a lovely comment on last week's grade booster. Everybody piling in with the right answer. I think 1 or 2 people confusing aggregate supply and demand here. The answer is indeed D. So whenever there's a big rise in firms' costs, supply shifts to the left in the short run. So well done to Ed and George and Rocco and Jackson and Lise for getting the right answer to that. Here's question number 2. All right, this is a little harder. Okay, diagram. Initially, the economy is in equilibrium at point X. The government increases spending on education, but this coincides with an increase in wage inflation. So which point shows the most likely short-run equilibrium of the economy? Take a moment on this, and whilst you're thinking of the answer, I'm going to give a shout out to Mr. Merrick, who very kindly, great inspirational teacher, is letting us watch in the lesson. How cool is that to have a live stream in an economics lesson? I'm assuming, of course, that Mr. Merrick is an economics teacher. What do we think here? Most people saying C. Let's double check. It is C. The increase in education spending, C plus I plus G, of course, the G's gone up. The wage inflation likely to cause an inward shift of aggregate supply. Good stuff. Let's try one more question. Diagram, sorry, government, obviously a diagram, there's 4 diagrams. A government plans to increase spending on education and training every year, so committing to increasing spending on education and training. Which diagram shows the likely effect of this increase on the economy's long-run output and price level? So a shout out for Lindsay from Owen. Always pleased to give a shout out, especially to top economics teachers. So government's increasing spending on education and training every year. What's the likely effect on long-run output and price? 4 diagrams there. This is why multiple choice is quite handy, actually, because it reminds you of the diagrams you have to draw later on in the exam. Goat says, Geoff, can you double check? I'm sure it's A. Well, I'm sure it's not A, actually, Goat. Let's double check. Here's the answer. It is indeed C. The increase in government spending, of course, is G. C+I+G, and you'd hope and expect that the investment in education and training would have a long run effect on aggregate supply. And the Snap Bandit saying, assuming that increased spending does translate to a more productive workforce. There's no guarantee that happens. Although you sometimes have to think, the Snap Bandit, about the consequences of not spending enough on education and training. Shout out to Miss Redpath. We're watching in the lesson from Robbie. Robbie's enjoying the lesson there. Okay, let's move on. We're going to focus on short and long and aggregate supply. So over to you on this one. Can you please give me 2 factors, if you're watching in lessons in class, jot them down. 2 factors likely to cause an inward shift of short run aggregate supply. Over to you. So our focus here is short run aggregate supply. We're going to look at long run as well in this lesson. Now, in particular, if you can think about specific factors, I mean, the more application, the better, because obviously the application is what we really try and focus on in these sessions. James talking about wage rates and commodity prices, e.g. oil and gas. Top Tip Man is talking about minimum wage going up. And the Snap Bandit talk about an exchange rate depreciation. Nice link there between currencies and SRAS. Really good stuff. Isaac talking about climatic conditions affecting production and costs in things like farming and extractive industries. Shout out to Miss Rogers, widely known in the economics community as one of the GOAT economics teachers in the teaching community. Here we go, some good answers coming through. The Shrimp talks about the rising world commodity prices, i.e. lithium, cobalt, and other natural resources. Yeah, a lot of people in their answers talk about increasing the price of commodities. Always better to add in a bit of such as seasoning, such as copper, cocoa, lithium, cobalt, whatever. You don't need to know the prices of those things. You just need to have good examples. Okay. Mr. Patterson is allowing his group to watch this in lessons. Fantastic teaching. Any teacher who's got the confidence to show a live stream in a lesson deserves a hat tip. So I've gone for input prices, rising global prices for key raw materials, not just raw materials, key ones. So timber used in construction, copper used in manufacturing e-vehicles, lithium used in manufacturing e-vehicle batteries, and so on and so forth. By the way, what you're doing there in that example on the screen is getting the application. Increase in input prices, yes, but give me some application. Macroeconomics has microeconomic foundations. A shout out to James Yates. He's not a teacher, he's just a cool student. And things like supply disruptions, so natural disasters, trade restrictions, obviously the impact of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine and Russian invasion of Ukraine. Any supply disruptions can cause quite significant inward shifts of aggregate supply, particularly if that industry is a significant employer, significant contributor to GDP. Okay, so here we go. A couple of examples. The world's price of copper. Now, it could well be that this could be a micro question, could be a paper 3 question. Who knows, synoptic, but that's the monthly price of copper globally. Fell in the early months of the pandemic and then shot up. It nearly doubled in 2021-22, the world price of copper. Think of that as potential paper 1 question as well. And the other one, of course, is cocoa. Now, I'm told that my revision sessions send people to sleep. And that's good news, because the alternative is to drink a cup of cocoa, but it's super expensive, whereas I can send you to sleep for free. But look what's happened to the world price of cocoa in the last year or so. Absolutely staggering. Now, whether that's good or bad news depends on the cause and the extent to which the farmers, the growers themselves actually get the benefits. Okay, so let's move on. Have a 60-second comment question, please. Can you explain how a currency appreciation can affect short-run supply? Have a go. Now, some people mentioned depreciation in their answer, so have a go at writing a quick chain of reasoning. Explain how a currency appreciation It can affect short run aggregate supply. Nice link here. Shout out to Mr. Patterson, an economics teacher who's much loved by students. Luca says he's a bit late. He's had to go out and buy some waffles. Well, you could have got your waffles for free. Here. Some good answers coming through. Really good. Now, keep working on those chains of reasoning, everybody. Yeah, James Yates has a good answer there. And the Snap Bandit, one of our great contributors. Really good stuff. Yeah, the key thing here is to make that connection between the exchange rate and inflation. I think this could be a super topical question in paper 2, the impact of currency changes using ADAS analysis. So James there talks about imported factors of production being cheaper, reduces their cost of production, especially applies to imported raw materials such as lithium. Most global commodities are priced in US dollars. So the pound rises against the dollar, that should in theory help to cause disinflation in a country such as the UK. So here's my answer on the left hand side. A currency appreciation usually causes import prices to fall. There might be other offsetting factors. So for example, the 3 Cs, coffee, cocoa and copper priced in dollars will be cheaper if sterling rises in value against the US dollar. Ceteris paribus, we always love that assumption. This will lead to an outward shift of short run aggregate supply. What I thought I'd just show there is the pound against the dollar. I do think exchange rates could feature heavily this year. The pound was falling quite sharply during 2021 and in particular in the late autumn of 2022. Something must have been happening. I don't know, some hypothetical situation. Maybe some government announced £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts. Maybe the bond markets got spooked by it and the currency markets. Something must have happened in late 2022. I can't remember the name of the Prime Minister or the Chancellor, but it will come back to me at some stage. Now, since then, the pound has recovered from $1.10 to sort of $1.30. And in part, that's the Bank of England raising interest rates, but it's also a part result of a bit more confidence returning to the UK economy. So, good stuff. I'll try and do a few more shout outs in a few seconds. We'll keep a lookout. Oh yeah, this is really important. Explain how a change in government economic policy, not interest rates, by the way. So choose a policy. How might that impact on short run aggregate supply? Do have a go. Let's see what people come up with in a minute. Again, you could get a question, examine 2 causes of a currency appreciation or depreciation. What kind of government policies? 2 causes of shift of supply. Now, Muskan's brought that in, and I want to talk about corporation tax. We need to talk about it. A lot of students get this wrong, and it's very important we go through this for 5 seconds. James has a nice thing about quotas. Yeah, import quotas. Excellent point about creating scarcity through quotas. JT talks about the living wage going up, which is a super example. Will has a point about migration. Keep an eye on the chat window, everybody. There's some great answers, as always, coming through. Yeah, Snap Bandit talking about discretionary fiscal policies, subsidies, and people talking about import controls. Really good stuff. Can I just quickly go through? I'll put my answers on the screen. But while I do that, oh yeah, here we go. So I just want to talk about corporation tax. Corporation tax does not cause a shift in short run aggregate supply. Corporation tax is a tax on profits. It's not a tax on costs. And a lot of students seem to think that cutting corporation tax increases aggregate supply in the short run. It doesn't. It's not the cost of production. It might have an effect on long run aggregate supply through investment. But please, let's not put this rubbish in about corporation tax and short run aggregate supply, because it's not the case. So I've gone for changes in minimum wages, changes in environmental taxes, things like a carbon tax, and things like subsidies, I think was mentioned. Good example there, minimum wage is now £11.44 per hour. It's likely to increase labour costs in many industries. Macroeconomics has micro foundations in sectors such as tourism, hospitality and retail. Not every sector, the car industry probably not, but certainly in security and in social care, tourism, hospitality. Yeah, G9 says, what about indirect taxes like VAT? Absolutely right. So an increase in VAT can cause an inward shift of short-run aggregate supply if the VAT is a tax on suppliers. Gets passed on through the supply chain, doesn't it? Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. And also, I think talks about greater regulation. So tougher pollution regulations can add to firms' costs. All good stuff. Well done, everybody. Now let's focus on long-run aggregate supply. I'm conscious of time today, by the way. We'll try and do some more shout-outs. Can you give me 2 factors? So you need to know what shifts short-run supply. You also need to know what shifts long-run aggregate supply. So have a go, please. Identify 2 factors. You choose and explain them that determine a country's long-run aggregate supply. The more detail you can put in, the better. And that's not easy in a minute. Noah wants me to give a shout out to Sam Proust. But Stefan's gone for labour productivity and infrastructure. And James has gone for the quality of the capital stock and the size of the active labour force. Haida wants a shout out to Mr. Arif, his economics teacher. Will has a great point there about immigration policies, which we will talk about in a second or two. He says it increases the quantity of factors of production. Of course, there's also a quality of aspects. Some really good answers coming through here. Quality and quantity of factors of production. While we're talking about supply side policies to improve productivity. Excellent. Yeah, really good. And G9, wow. Look at that point here. Let's take a moment on this one. The institutional structure of the economy, the stability of banking. Yeah, so the institutional factors can have an insane effect, in particular for developing emerging countries. Does their institutional structure, infrastructure, does it keep pace with growth of output? You need, for example, the quality of the banking sector, the capacity of the legal system to deal with entrepreneurship and things. Really super important. Okay. Here are my 2 points. I've gone for capital stock and technological progress. So things like infrastructure, really important. I want to make a key point about that in a second. Technological progress. And really that does depend on the level of gross as well as net investment. So you need a sufficient level of investment in gross terms to more than offset depreciation so that the capital stock goes up. And the labour force and labour productivity, so it's the size and quality of the labour force. So investment in growing the labour force and crucially human capital to lift the capabilities and the capacity of industries. I was chatting to somebody at the Livestream live event last week, some amazing students from George Abbott School, incredibly interested in their economics. And we were talking about Hausmann's theory, Scrabble theory of development. That if countries really want to grow, you've got to lift productivity. You really do. But you need to increase capability as well as capacity. You need workers to be able to work in different industries that are linked so that you increase the capabilities of a country to grow your economy. So these are all fundamentals, aren't they, in terms of long-run supply. Can I just say something about infrastructure? I have a feeling there'll be big questions on development this year. If we look at the next slide, infrastructure is super important for developing countries. I just thought I'd give some examples. Off-grid renewables, for example, often at a local level. I've got former students now working in Kenya who work in this kind of area. Transport infrastructure to grow your tourism sector, for example. Mobile money systems, M-Pesa in Kenya and Rwanda. Drone technologies to improve delivery of healthcare. Simple, small-scale infrastructure like improved irrigation in farming. Basic infrastructure affecting sanitation and transit of goods at borders, waste disposal systems. It's not always about bridges and roads and about power stations. Oftentimes, the infrastructure that has the biggest effect is localized, it's regional, it's at a micro level, in farming, in solar energy. And of course, then the key question comes, who funds the infrastructure? Do governments borrow the money? external debt becomes an issue, or do they try and attract FDI into those sectors? Superb. Right. Okay. Moving on. Let's look at migration as a topic. Here's the data for migration in the UK, by the way. Really interesting data on migration. Again, I think this is a key topic. The green figure there shows the net migration. It's the difference between the blue and the dark line. And of course, in the last couple of years, we've had huge levels of net migration into the economy. Over to you for the next question. Can you give me two impacts of high migration? Ideally, one on aggregate supply in the short run, one on long run. So try and make a distinction. Have a go. So what we're doing here is we're linking a super important topic of migration. Toby wants to shout out to Miss Banks. Happy to do so. What about migration and aggregate supply? Now, the really smart answers here would make 1 point on short-run dynamic and one on long-run dynamic. Who can really smash this? Great answer there from Luca. Well done. It's not easy in a minute. Yeah, some good stuff on short run. Can we maybe get some long run points? Keep an eye on the chat stream, everybody. Some great answers coming through. Lara talking about filled job vacancies such as engineers, NHS workers, increasing the quantity of the labour force. Again, boosting aggregate supply in the short run. What about long run? What about long run? Really important. Okay. Gibbo wants a shout out to Ms. Hopwood, who again, one of the great teachers in our community, allowing the students to watch our live stream. Hopefully it's useful. What do we think? Okay, Stefan talking about, it depends on the economy. Well, exactly right. Clearly high levels of migration create extra pressure on existing resources. So they increase the size of the workforce, but put pressure on things like housing, education, healthcare. What have we got here? I'm just looking for some long run dynamics. Most people very strong. Nice point and answer there from George about labour capital. What have we got? Yeah, some good stuff. Some good stuff coming through. Let's double check on my answers. I just want to be okay. So short run, I would focus on skill shortages and business costs. So it's clearly the case that if you have an influx of skilled labour, those skilled labour shortages in sectors such as social care and construction can help to moderate wage and price inflation. I think the longer run dynamic is all about who comes in, how long do they stay, and do they then contribute in areas such as entrepreneurship. So increased immigration undoubtedly can spur investment in infrastructure, derive demand for infrastructure, and many people come to the UK, start their own businesses, become exporters of the future, highly innovative, highly entrepreneurial. If you take a swing into parts of London and what have you, Shoreditch, for example, amazing diversity of new businesses, driving a kind of entrepreneurial culture, which in theory will have a significant effect going forward. But of course, it does depend. So the next question is as follows. Can you just give me a 60-second evaluation to finish with? Here's our last question today. I think evaluate the extent to which high net inward migration will increase a country's long run aggregate supply. This is a tough question. What do we think? Evaluate the extent to which high net inward migration will increase long run aggregate supply. What does it depend on? Have a go. Now, this is a harder one to finish with today. Oh, wow. But Stefan talks about 15,000 Syrian refugees who created businesses in Germany. That is an amazing bit of application there. So Laura talking about the impact on pressure on the public sector, maybe some crowding out effects there in terms of resources. So to evaluate the extent to which high net migration will increase aggregate supply in the long run. Here's your chance to evaluate. And James has a brilliant evaluation point there. If immigrants are economically active and productive, okay, good point. G9 says it depends on how skilled the workers are. So it depends on what we call G9, the composition effects of the migrant workforce. The migrant number is a total, it's an aggregate, but you have to look underneath the surface. So you have to disaggregate that data. And if you disaggregate, you then get the evaluative points more easily. Yeah, so Luca talks about this depends on the human capital of the inward migration and the unemployment rate of the UK economy. Some good stuff. Yeah, Finley says if immigrants are highly skilled and productive, the capacity of the economy will increase in the long run. Yeah, so you're making this nice point about it depends on who's coming in, how long they're staying, what skills they bring to the economy. Keep in mind, of course, this could be migration to any country. We just think about the UK. Here's my point. So much depends on, by the way, I love this phrase, a lot depends on, and much depends on the length of time that migrants spend in a country, and critically, their human capital relative to the existing stock of workers, the existing population. So, for example, if we're using visa programs to attract highly skilled workers, then in theory, the marginal quality of the applicants, marginal quality of the migrants coming in is high, and that drives up the average. So a lot depends on the existing human capital and the reasons why people enter a country. So we've had hundreds of thousands of students coming to the UK, which I celebrate. They add to aggregate demand and improve the trade balance. But in theory, they don't do a lot for the active labour supply because they tend to be relatively economically inactive. The Snack Bandit, one of our great contributors. I showcase your amazing work to the group. Singapore is a fantastic example. Growth was fueled through providing incentives for skilled expats to enter and improve institutional strength, financial sector and tech. Wow, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant point there. So a lot does depend on the composition effects. You need to look beneath the surface. For my evidence, the papers I've read, on average, migrants who come to the UK are better skilled, more skilled than the existing workforce, particularly if you use a targeted sort of work visa program. And as we know, the number of work visas has increased from 100,000 in 2019 to over 500,000 last year. The Shrimp talks about, you could also say that they may not add to the economy as they may be sending their earnings back home, meaning they're not spending or equally inactive in terms of spending. Yeah, a really good point there about remittances. Now, look, there's something like 700 million people globally now. About 1 in 10 of the world's population now live and work in countries other than the country they were born in. So international labour migration and remittances are just some of the biggest topics around at the moment. Equally, I know people who live and work in the UK send remittances home, and they work long hours. They work long hours to send money home. They're some of the most hardest working people I've ever met. Wow, well done, everybody. We've done half an hour. I thought we'd keep this down to half an hour. Here's my big face again in the middle of the screen. There we go. Jim in the production team is making a difference as we speak. Oh yeah, just want to give a big shout out to Mr. Ellsworth at Tadcaster Grammar School. Okay, a local school to tutor to you, actually, a great school with some superb economists doing great work there. Well then, everybody, half an hour on aggregate supply. I think, do you know what we're doing tomorrow? I think we're doing monopsony tomorrow. I think we are looking at monopsony both in labour markets and product markets, and that'll be a super important topic. Just published a video looking at hot topics on paper 1. I'm going to do one this afternoon for paper 2. So take a look at those and please share widely. If you've enjoyed the session, consider pressing like and subscribe so that you can join us next time we meet, 11:30, every day up to and including the exams. So thank you for joining, everybody. Stay safe, stay happy, stay positive, stay curious, and see you sometime soon.